Hello, and thank you for tuning in to Roots of Life Christian Counsel Ministries, where we seek to provide holistic healing for the broken in spirit, mind, and body through biblical counsel. The scripture foundation is the Gospel of John, chapter 15, verse 5, which states in the words of Christ, I am the vine, ye are the branches. He that abide in me, and I in you, shall bear much fruit. For without me, you can do nothing. Today's discussion is focusing on, for the month of October, the focus group is teenagers. So today's first topic of discussion will be discussing in relation to common issues and struggles teenagers deal or struggle with. Um, Today's first will be roots of anger. My name is Minister Zanetta Baker. I am a certified pastoral counselor as well as a registered nurse. So today's discussion, roots of anger among our teenagers. We will be discussing understanding the developmental stages of tumultuous teens. What are some of their causes and triggers of anger? Recognizing the levels of anger, and then how to help them gain control of their anger. We all, adults, were teens at some point in our lives, okay? And we can identify with the imbalances of hormonal fluctuations, peer influences, and rebellious attitudes towards our parents, our guardians, and others. Okay, now some of us, including me, are raising teens as our own children or as guardians or even mentors if you are not a biological parent. Perhaps you are a foster, you're still a parent. But those who may not have any children and are mentors to teenagers, this too will help you be able to understand their roots of their anger. Okay, I'm raising a soon to be 14-year-old son, and he reminds me of when I was a teenager and the things I went through and experienced. So with him, he actually helps me and reminds me to understand him through his developmental stage. So first topic or first discussion, developmental stages of tumultuous teens. And I stated it as such, tumultuous teens. Why? Because at this stage of their lives, they are going through a bridge, if you will, from children, there's that phase into adulthood. But that in between that bridge phase is the teenage stage. So they're coming out of being children, they're going through the transition stage of becoming an adult and everything that comes along with transforming, if you will, into an adult. So tumultuous teens relates to terrible twos of small children. Why? Because it is the testing phase of their lives. With the terrible twos, as we know, it's testing the limits of behavior in search of finding or discovering what behaviors are acceptable or unacceptable behavior. Okay, same concept applies to teens. Okay, it's just at a different level. Okay, they begin to discover themselves. They're in that stage of finding their identity and where they fit within their peer groups and what behaviors are acceptable and how they themselves will impact society. Okay, psychologist Erickson characterized human development into psychosocial stages, developmental stages from birth all the way through late adulthood. Okay? Adolescence is a developmental stage beginning at the age of 13 through 19 years of age. Adolescence from 13 through 19 years of age. And this is where identity relation becomes their primary focus. The inability to be able to identify or find identity or where they fit in the world, how they can be utilized in the world, who they can identify to, in becoming the identity that they desire to become, on the flip side, can cause role confusion. So, psychologist Erickson states a successful transition in adolescence is for them to be able to come into themselves, the identity part. The inability of them finding identity produces that role confusion. They don't know who they are. They don't know who they are supposed to be. What are they supposed to do? That role confusion. And don't we see that a lot in today's generation? We have a lot of confused teenagers that truly do not know who they are within themselves, and more so than that, who they are in God, whom God created them to be. And we'll discuss that more. So, teenagers in this stage, they learn from their peers. They are impressionable at this phase of their development. Okay, they are in search of trying to figure out where they fit and who they desire to become. Teenagers are tumultuous. Why? Because as they are biologically changing in physical form, they are changing emotionally and mentally, affected by hormones. Hormones are increasing the production within males and females. So it's affecting them not just outwardly, the physical, but also internally. They are affected. And they're trying to understand and navigate their world, their immediate surroundings, like in school environment around their other peers, the pressures of conformity from their peers, social media, and even expectations from parents and or guardians. Okay. At this stage as well, their brain is still developing cognitively and not yet mature to process overwhelming states of emotion such as anger. Such as anger. And we see a lot of angry teenagers these days. It is highly concerning. Highly concerning. So, what are some causes and triggers of anger, the source within these teenagers, these adolescents? Okay, there are two reasons or two causes, sources of anger. It can be external and or internal. Internal causes of anger is a response to a physical attack by someone or something. It's an insult, either being abandoned emotionally and or physically, or to a circumstance where there is no person at fault, such as the weather is too hot, 100-degree temperatures, health issues, or even it's because it's traffic and not going nowhere, just at a standstill. And they get that anxiousness that turns into anger. Okay. Or the second cause can be internal causes of anger, which is most often due to the teen's misperceptions of reality. Misperceptions of reality. And an example where this can exist or be a source of is if a teen as a child was in a poverty environment where they grew up in poverty, or in a violent home where there was violence, domestic violence, amongst their parents, their guardians, and they witnessed that. They begin to internalize that violence, and it becomes their misperceived idea of what reality is to be like, but yet there's an anger because they have no control to change it or fix it. Okay. Or it can be the internal source of anger can also be caused by destructive thinking about normal life issues. Okay. An example of this can come about if a teen, as a child or even in their teen stage, have been abused or have experienced some type of personal trauma, a personal trauma, or even an external trauma that they internalized. Um, it can be memories as well of those traumatic events that were unresolved. Okay. Um, or it can also be dealing with personal health issues and having to take or be on lots of medications. All of those things affects a teenager. Again, they're in that transitional phase and developmental stage of their life of identity. They're trying to build identity, or who they are to become as an adult. Okay, remember, a teenager's brain is not fully mature to process overwhelming emotional states, and it affects the psychological and mental well-being. All we have to do is remember ourselves at the teenage stage. How were we? What environments did we grow up in? How did that affect us now that we are adults? In hindsight, looking back, how did that affect our psyche? How did it affect our mentality and our emotional states? What did we do to cope? Put yourselves in your child's shoes to be able to understand them on their level, having once been a teenager before. Okay, which leads into the third question, recognizing, being able to recognize your teenagers or a teenager's levels of anger and how they immaturely attempt to handle the anger. Okay, so there are 6 levels of anger. 6. 1, irritation or frustration. Okay, it's a feeling of discomfort that someone or something has caused. Just irritated. We all can identify with being irritated by something or someone. It's just a discomfort. That's a subtle form of anger, believe it or not. A second level is indignation. And that is a powerful feeling that something must be answered or some wrong must be corrected. It's that this is wrong, it needs to be fixed, it needs to be right. Um, or there needs to be an explanation as to why this happened or why someone did that act or that thing, indignation. That also is a form of anger. Okay, a third type is wrath. We hear wrath in terms of God, God's wrath upon man for their sin. This wrath, in reference to um, a level of anger for teenagers, is a strong desire to avenge a wrong. It's basically revenge. Okay. More than just a teenager can identify with feeling a level of wrath when you have been done wrong and you want the flesh wants to get revenge back to the person who inflicted pain or hurt towards you. You want to inflict it back, that wrath, that revenge. The fifth type, the fifth level of anger is rage. Okay, rage. And rage is I'm sorry, I missed the fourth one. The fourth one is fury. And that is a partial loss of emotional control. It's a partial, or you are borderline um, about to lose it. Borderline. But it's anger losing it. Okay. We have some teenagers are on the brick of just completely losing it, but they're borderline. They got that fury. I'm just angry all the time. I'm just mad and I want to take it out on to somebody. Okay. That follows wrath is fury. From fury, the fifth is rage. Okay. Rage now is a complete loss of emotional control. Complete loss. You have absolutely blew the roof. You are rageful, and it most times involves a violent aggression towards others. A violent aggression towards others. In reference to our teenagers, um, we can attribute rage to the suspects of school shootings. These teenagers, notice how it's young people, they're suffering and they are internalizing this anger so much so, and it has built up and built up and built up to now it has taken on the form of rage, and they want to take it out on other people. This is their way of expressing that something is bothering them, something is hurting them that has not been resolved, it has not been addressed, or perhaps they've been ignored, no one sees them, and this is their outright cry, but through violence. They go through this rage of taking it out on other people. Absolutely unhealthy. And not only a danger to the person who's feeling it, but of course to those whom they take it out on too become hurt and injured from someone else's anger. Okay. And the sixth level of anger is hostility. Hostility is a persistent anger. It's an ongoing, unrelenting anger. Okay. And enmity towards other people. And this can become ingrained into a teenager's personality development and can affect his or her entire outlook on the world and life. Hostility is a huge issue. Again, teenagers, they are still developing. Their brain is still forming. It hasn't matured completely. A teenager's brain is not completely matured until the age of 25. So they are still learning how to cope, learning how to process overwhelming emotional states. So when they have unresolved anger from irritation, frustration, that's ongoing, unrelieved, unresolved. No one is acknowledging them or attempting to help them deal or process the source root of their anger. It can absolutely lead into this hostility, which basically brands their personality. It's ingrained into their personality and can affect them for the rest of their lives if it's not addressed, if it's not resolved, if it's not coped with. That's serious. And again, look at the world today, the generation today of our youth, they are dealing with some overwhelming sense of emotions. They have been assaulted. They have been insulted, criticized, humiliated, either from their parents, guardians, from their peers, and no one is paying attention to their cries. Our teenagers are crying for help. They're crying for help. They're angry and they're looking. They're looking. They don't know how to verbalize help. They're not at the stage where they can ask for help because, again, they're trying to find their identity in the world. How can they impact the world, or what contributions can they make to the world as they are transitioning? So they have a tendency to think that they can handle things on their own, that they don't need any help. But in essence, they do, because their brain, again, is not fully matured to process overwhelming states of emotion. So, how do they handle the anger? So we got the levels: irritation, indignation, wrath, fury, rage, and hostility. Now, how do they handle it? Okay, how does it now present itself? There's three ways. It can be in the form of repression, suppression, and expression. Okay, repression. What is repression? Repression is when a teenager basically denies that they're angry. They just deny it. Um, this is unhealthy. It's unhealthy. Why? Because not being self aware of your emotions keeps you bound to it. If you're not aware of your emotions and you deny it like it doesn't exist, in essence, that emotion keeps you bound to it. You stay stuck in it. It's repressed. But guess what? It's not going away. It's going to stay there and it's going to fester. And what happens is repressing anger can cause a teen to have unexpected outbursts of hostility or violence towards others, or they can inwardly direct it towards themselves and become self-destructive. They can become depressed, anxious, and or experience physical discomfort like headaches, GI problems, which is gastrointestinal problems, such as upset stomach, nauseousness, or even vomiting, because they have this anger within them just boiling. But yet they deny that it exists. It is only hurting them even more within the inside. They're literally making themselves sick by holding in this anger. Repressed anger is toxic. It's toxic, and it can cause emotional and physical problems. The second form of handling or presentation of anger teenagers tend to exhibit is suppression. Suppression is when a teen acknowledges that they're angry, but then they stuff it. They stuff it, okay? It's a redirection of the anger into an activity that can either be healthy or unhealthy, okay? So they know they're angry, they still don't know how to process or deal, so they redirect it into something else, okay? They stuff it. And again, it can be into a healthy way of coping or in an unhealthy way of coping. A healthy way, for an example, can be directing that energy towards a greater good and service towards others. Okay, it takes the focus off of themselves when they can focus their energy into a service that's for a greater good for other people. It takes the attention away. Okay, it can serve as a method of releasing that anger when the focus is removed from self. Okay, an unhealthy way of redirecting that anger, that suppressed anger, for example, can be self destruction, okay, harm to self, or engaging. A way that you can harm self is through self destructive or wild behaviors, such as drugs, uh, promiscuity, those type of things that self-serving. It seeks to cover up the anger by making one feel good, that sense of euphoria or pleasure, okay, to suppress the anger that teenager is feeling. That is a unhealthy way of redirecting that energy into activities that thus becomes self-destructive. Okay. And the third way teenagers can express or handle anger is through expression. And expression, as it is, as it states, express. Okay. But this form is a ventilation of the angry feelings. They're venting. Okay. How they vent can be in a healthy ventilation or in a unhealthy ventilation. Okay. A healthy expression of anger can be done with respectful assertiveness. A respectful assertiveness. And an example can be they're angry from a wrongful injustice, and a way to express the anger is to perhaps to start a movement on whatever the injustice was, to start a movement against it, to prevent it from happening again, or to, seek some sort of justice from it. That's a healthy, respectful, assertive way in expressing anger. An unhealthy expression of anger can be that violent aggressiveness that hurts other people. Okay. And this may be the teenager's way of seeking revenge, of seeking revenge. And for example, of an unhealthy way, it can be a bullied teen. Okay. A bullied teen who's frustrated at being ridiculed, humiliated, or criticized. Excuse me. Okay. A bullied teen can become so done with being bullied by others or one person that the only way that they can express it out is by being violent and aggressive. They, in actuality, take on the characteristics of the bully by being that, by being aggressive and being violent, a way of expressing their anger. Okay, so how do we help teens gain control of their anger? If it's your own, or you're a mentor to teens, how can we help them gain control of their anger? Okay, so there's a couple of ways. Number one, self-awareness is key. You cannot confront what you do not become aware of. Okay, so help the teen see their anger. So see it. Help them see it by focusing on the source of the anger. What is making them angry? Help them see it. Okay. Again, that repression, we don't want them to repress it by denying that the anger exists. Help them see it. Okay. And you can help them see it by listing the triggers that causes them to become angry, and then to help them avoid the triggers as much as possible. It starts with, again, self-aware. See it, acknowledge it, list the sources, list the triggers, okay? And then try to avoid them, okay? And then begin to explore the history of the anger, and watch or pay attention to the pattern, to the behavioral pattern of the anger. Okay, start to trace it. Okay, and then speak it out loud. This is again in the beginning phases. Speak it, have the team speak it out loud. Okay, help them acknowledge that they're angry. It's okay to speak out and say, I'm feeling angry right now. Get it out of your system. Remember, repressed anger, suppressed anger is toxic. It's toxic to the spirit, it's toxic to your emotions, it's toxic to your mental and psychological well being. Acknowledge that it exists. Two, delay it. Okay, another way to help your team gain control of anger is to delay it. And what do I mean? Take a time out. Take a time out. They're angry. They've acknowledged it. They see it. I'm feeling angry right now. Now let's take a time out and disengage from the situation or persons or people that's triggering the anger. Remove yourself from the source and take a time out. Okay. Write it out. Don't fight it out. Write it out. Don't fight it out. So write out those feelings, the thoughts that are troubling you, that's making you angry. Writing is a source of release. Okay. If you're unable to verbalize it, then write it out. Exactly how you're feeling, what you're feeling. Write those troubling thoughts out. You will be amazed at how helpful it can be. Okay, a journal, and this can be a personal activity to write out those feelings if you are not comfortable in sharing it. But at least you're helping yourself, your teenager, help them write it out. Okay. Um, Another is that they can talk with a friend that's unrelated to the source of their anger, or to the situation that's causing them anger. Okay? And it allows them to ask that friend, that trusted friend or person, for constructive direction on advice on how to handle or manage how they're feeling in the moment. Okay? And then help them pray about it. Help them pray about it and to ask God for insight into their anger, okay, into why they are feeling the way that they feel, that strong feeling of anger. God knows us inside and out. And sometimes it's when we are in our feelings, God will show something about ourselves in the midst of it. and to help us understand why we feel the way that we feel in the midst of it. Help your teen build that relationship with God even through their anger. Okay. A third way to help your teen gain control of their anger is to control it. Okay. Control it. And control it is by responding by thinking of your actions, not reacting in haste or in impulse. Okay. This will take some time because we're dealing with teens who, because their hormones are all over the place, they are impulsive. Okay, they just do and don't think. So this takes practice. This takes consistency in being able to control the anger by responding and thinking of your actions, and not reacting to it. Okay. Confront. If you have to confront as a ways of controlling it, confront only to restore, not to destroy. Confront only to restore, not to destroy. And then another way to control it is to surrender your desire to seek revenge. Surrender your desire to seek revenge. Okay. The Bible states in the book of Romans, chapter 12, verse 19, it states, "Do not take revenge, my dear friends, but leave room for God's wrath." Okay. For it is written in the words of Christ, of God, "It is mine to avenge. I will repay, says the Lord." God is our avenger. He sees all. He knows all. He knows the hearts and motives of every human being He created. He knows the heart's desire. He knows the wicked ones. He will be the one to avenge our wrongs, or from those who wronged us. He will handle it. It is not our job. It is not our role. It's not our obligation to seek revenge on another human life whom God also created. He will handle and deal with the evil doer, the wrong doer, in His time, not our time. Okay. And then the last way to help your teen gain control of their anger is to help them own it. Own your anger. How? By helping them have a accountability partner. Okay. As a parent, we know how that go. I'm currently experiencing that. Our teens will rebuttal against us. They will not hear a word that we have to say. But if it was someone else outside of the parental role, they'll be quick to listen, or be held accountable to that person, as opposed to us, the parent. Um, but help them have an accountability partner, okay, that can help keep them calm when they're in the heat of anger, in the moment of anger, of distress. And they can also help them gently remind them of the consequences of their uncontrolled anger. An accountability partner can be a mentor. It can be a youth mentor, youth minister that can help keep your teen accountable to their anger, to their behavior. Okay. And if that doesn't suffice, or don't have the means to help them have an accountability partner, have them join an anger management group where they can be among peers and others who are dealing with the same. And with that, they can learn to develop perhaps an accountability to one another through the group, because they can identify and they can understand the levels, the reasons, the sources, and can help each other cope through healthy means. Okay. The Bible speaks about anger more than 500 times in the Bible, from Genesis all the way through Revelation. Okay. It is spoken of just as much as the emotion of love. That speaks volume in how God views anger and how he wants us to not allow anger control and rule our lives. Why? Because it destroys relationships. It destroys self, and it destroys relationships. And it can be a barrier in developing a relationship with God when we are so angry. Okay? Even Jesus experienced and expressed anger. Okay? In the Gospel of Mark, chapter 3, 5, when when he saw the market sellers using God's temple to sell goods in God's house, Jesus was angry. What did he do? He expressed it by flipping their tables upside down. Okay. So even Jesus knows what it's like to feel anger, to feel that sense of injustice. Okay. Understand that anger is not a sin. Jesus didn't sin when he got angry. Anger is not a sin. It is a sin when it's hurtful and harms other people. Okay. So it's how we respond in anger. It's how we respond in anger that determines whether or not it is a sin or it becomes a sin. Anger is a natural response to a real or perceived threat. It is not a sin. It is a powerful alertness that heightens our emotions for action, or to cause, to do an action, perform an action, to suffice or to resolve the anger. So I pray that for your teenagers that you have gained some insight and understanding what are the sources, the causes, the triggers of anger in teenagers, understanding their developmental stages of their life. When you understand where they are, perhaps that can help you understand their behavior, understand how they process, and to help them build healthy coping mechanisms in expressing assertive anger, not aggressive or hostile anger towards other people, because it only harms themselves and it harms those around them. Okay. I pray that you have been blessed with this information. Again, for the month of October, we will continue discussing common issues and struggles among our teenagers. Next week will be a discussion on bullying, the roots of bullying. That is another huge concern and struggle for both the bully and the one being bullied. We're going to go a little bit more into the roots of bullying with our teenagers. Thank you for your view. God bless you. And until next week, be blessed.